All right, welcome back to Cycle 365. It is episode 34. I'm one of your co-hosts, Simon Villanos.
And I'm Jesse Booten.
And we got a little bit of a shorter podcast this week. Cody's not with us. He has to take care of some personal business, but me and Jesse are going to hold it down. We're going to talk about essentially the return of sports. I don't know if it's super official yet, but there are plans that are being made, right, Jesse?
Yes, there are. The NHL is coming back hopefully within the next few months, and same with football. So we're going to talk about those two.
True. Let's start with the NHL first. So they have already put together a plan, and I think it's a pretty solid plan. This plan is more put together than what the NBA has right now, or even what football, college and NFL has right now. So Jesse, why don't you go ahead and tell the listeners about this little plan that the NHL has put together in place?
All right. So the NHL has made this plan for returning in the 2020 season. I guess you could say they're planning to come back in July, I believe, maybe late June, beginning of July, and they have decided to just completely cut the rest of the regular season and go straight to the playoffs. But this playoff isn't going to be a normal NHL playoff that we've seen, forever. Instead of having your normal, top 3 seeds and then 2 wild cards from each conference, they're just going to go with the straight top 12 seeds from each conference are going to play in a 24-team playoff. It'll be definitely interesting to see. We've never seen anything like it before. There's a qualifying round. So basically the top 4 teams get a bye, and then the next, what would that be? 8 teams are going to play in the qualifying round to, I guess you could say, quote unquote, make it into the playoff. So that way it can be more like a regular Stanley Cup playoffs. But I definitely do think it's a great way to, wrap up the season and get the fans eat more hockey. They're playing best of 5 in the qualifying round, so there's going to be a ton more hockey games still. So I definitely think that this is a great way to go with it. It also gets more teams than normal in. I'm sorry for those few fans that have their teams outside of it. That sucks. Maybe you should just have a better team in the future. But anyways, I think that's most of it. Do you have anything to add, Simon, for what they're going to do?
Oh, I think this is pretty even, if I'm being honest, because obviously they're taking on more teams than they need to, and this pretty much does a solid job at giving the teams who are on the cusp a chance. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's something that's going to be fun. Is you're going to see a team like the New York Rangers, who just aren't really the best and haven't been in the playoffs for a while, but have had a long time, or like a long franchise of success in winning, get a chance as an 11 seed to maybe restart their franchise and get another Stanley Cup win. So I like teams seeing like being able to see teams like that. And then another team like the Minnesota Wild, they haven't been in a playoff in a while, and along with on the western side the Chicago Blackhawks, and they have a great history of winning a lot, but they haven't been very good in the last few years. But they're going to get to compete as a 12 seed just outside looking in. So I think you're right, giving teams that are just a little bit on the cusp a chance to win a championship.
Yeah, and I think that matters, just giving these teams a chance. First off, it's been a really long time without sports, so I really don't think most fans would mind that much. But fans will get to see their teams battle for a playoff spot, like literally battle. It's not over a course of a couple games. It's you got one series to make it in, and that's it. I definitely think that there are some top 4 seeds that feel like don't. Maybe they're getting a little bit of an unfair advantage. Granted, like this whole thing with the coronavirus or COVID-19 is crazy. So there's really no guessing how some of these teams will how well they'll play, right off the bat, especially the teams that will get some extra rest. I'm kind of looking at my own Dallas Stars because we talked about this off air, Jesse. You said the Oilers would probably overtake that 4th spot, relatively soon if this whole thing didn't happen. And if I'm being honest, I don't know how much the Stars deserve to get a bye, if I'm being real.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you said, we were talking about if this was a regular NHL season, by the end of the season, the Oilers would have been in that 4 seed. I mean, they don't really have a 4 seed if in a regular playoff, but I definitely think they might even take the jump and beat out the Vegas Knights for the 3 seed. because they're that good. So I definitely think that. So yeah, I mean Dallas. I mean I think it's good for Dallas. It's going to give them a shot to, go a little bit farther in the playoffs than they have in a long time. And same with on the Eastern side, the Philadelphia Flyers. I think they're in the exact same boat. I think if a regular season goes on, the Pittsburgh Penguins overtake that anyways. So I definitely think that that's two interesting things that this pandemic has brought about. That it's just going to be kind of I think more entertaining with teams like that. But again, obviously, do they deserve to be there? I don't know, and we'll see how they play. You're exactly right.
Oh yeah, no doubt at all. I think it's great either way. I mean, it's still sports coming back. Like I said, just in the future, looking back to now, I think a lot of people are going to look back at the teams that played and the stuff that went down in these playoffs. And, there'll definitely be an asterisk next to the 2019-2020 season just because of how crazy everything is, and that goes for all sports, really. That's what I meant. That goes for all sports. And it's unfortunate, but a plan's a plan. Like I said, we don't know how some of these teams will respond to this extra long break, but there's only one way to find out, and we have that answer now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a very good point to make, is that not just, I mean, we're talking about NHL right now and how those teams are going to play, because that's possibly what is going to be the first professional league back playing. It may possibly, I haven't heard much about the MLB and baseball, but I know they were going to probably propose something like this too, but I still think that the NHL is closer to returning. But at the same time, we're not talking about just NHL. All sports have been off for however this long has been. And so we'll see. I mean, it may take, said the asterisk on 2020, actually playing a professional sport. So it'll be interesting to see how those teams, handle that. I think it's big because they haven't been able to, be in their facilities working like normal. And, some of those players might not be doing the stuff that they need to outside of it. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, very true. We'll just have to see what happens. Jesse, you probably know more about this than I do, but if they're going to play with fans at all, or maybe have capacity so they could social distance, or what's the deal with the NHL?
I have not seen yet. I don't think they have gone that far forward. I think they just made a plan for the games. Let me just check real fast, but I'm not exactly sure what they said yet. I think it might be too early still. I mean, obviously, they're saying that they can start earliest is July 1st, but obviously we still got to see if that's going to happen. So I think they're more working on when is their actual start date before we start looking at are we going to have fans or not. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. That's fair for sure. We'll just have to see. I know the NFL, they're expecting having all fans, but I just think that's real unrealistic. I don't want a second outbreak to happen and then everything to close down again. I'd rather just there not be any fans and we could just enjoy sports. Am I right?
Yeah, I would agree. Maybe you could go half capacity, something like that. But but the NFL has announced it. Well, I think last weekend, that they expect to have all the fans there. So we'll see what happens.
Oh yeah. It'll be a little crazy for sure. Yep. Did you have anything else you wanted to add onto this NHL reopening plan that they put together?
I don't think there's anything else. I think it's going to be fun. I know we said we want to move into talking about the matchups and the seeds, just a real quick overview so our listeners know where everyone stands and if their team is in or not. So I know we can move on to that. But I think that's it for the return to play plan for the NHL. Yeah, they're just going straight to the playoffs. I think you might see a lot of professional sports do this that got cut in half, like baseball might do the same thing where they just go straight to a big tournament and all the teams play in a tournament, which would be pretty interesting too.
Yeah, it really would be interesting. All right, well then let's get into the seeding and all the teams that made the playoffs. Jesse, why don't you go ahead and the viewers who made it in?
All right, so we'll start with the Eastern Conference teams, your top 4 seeds that get that first week or first round bye, you could say. And I mean, when we say qualifying round and then top 4 seeds, I'm assuming it's laid out like the top 4 seeds are already in the playoffs, and then the qualifying rounds are going to take it down to the next top 4. So you have 8 total teams in the actual playoffs. So that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. So your top 4 seeds for the Eastern Conference are the Boston Bruins at number 1, the Tampa Bay Lightning at number 2, Washington at 3, and then the Philadelphia Flyers at 4. So that's your top 4 that are already into the playoffs. Again, we talked about it. I know you said it with the Stars, Simon, but I think Philadelphia is in that same boat as Dallas, where they're kind of getting a boost here to be in the playoffs as a number 4 seed, just because of where the standings were when this whole pandemic thing hit. So we'll see how that happens. But other than that, I think Boston, Tampa Bay, and Washington all deserve to be in the top 4, and I think they will all play well. Again, we'll see what happens with the extra, time off and stuff like that. But I think those 3 deserve to be in there. And then Philadelphia, congratulations, you're getting the boost in, so don't waste it.
Very true. Very true. I definitely could have seen the Penguins make it in over Flyers. I know Pittsburgh fans might be a little salty about that, but at the same time, technically speaking, they're playing the worst ranked team.
The Canadians aren't very good, so they should be all right.
Yeah.
But again, like we said, in a normal playoff push at the end of a regular season, if this season would have been a normal season, I do think Pittsburgh would have been in instead of the Philadelphia Flyers in the top 4. But alas, that is not what it is.
Yeah, hey, it happens. It's sports. Pittsburgh, I think they could get it done. And honestly, I think they'll be just fine. Here, let's talk about the rest of the teams before we move on.
All right, so we'll go through the qualifying games, I guess you could say, to make it into the playoff if you win. So it's going to be best of 5. And so the first game has the 5 seed Pittsburgh Penguins, like we just talked about, against the 12 seed Montreal Canadiens. We can just go real quick. We can each say what we think is going to happen. I think Boston sweeps this 3, or sorry, not Boston. The Penguins sweep it Pittsburgh 3-0.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say on the other side, there's the Oilers versus the Blackhawks, and I'd probably bet more on the Penguins beating down the lower seed than the Oilers, potentially. It's just me, though.
I don't know. I think they're a pretty even team. I think Pittsburgh and Edmonton are definitely. They probably both should be in the top 4. So I think they'll put it to their 12 seed either way. But we'll have to wait and see.
For sure.
Our second game is the 6 seed Carolina Hurricane versus the 11 seed New York Rangers. I talked a little bit about this earlier. It's going to be fun to see the Rangers get into the playoffs here. They've been really good in the past, and these last 10 years, 8 to 10 years, they haven't been as good. Obviously, it's a New York team. Everyone wants to see them. Yeah, that's good. I do still think the Hurricane will win. Maybe not 3-0, maybe like 4-1. Or sorry, 4-1. So that's what I could see there.
Yeah. Agreed.
Moving into the next game, you have the 7 seed New York Islanders versus the 10 seed Florida Panthers. I think this one might be a 3-0 win for the Islanders. For me, I know Florida wasn't playing good when the pandemic hit, so I don't know if maybe this helps. This pandemic and this break helps get them back on track, but I know they were in a skid going into it, so I think the New York Islanders will win that pretty easily.
Interesting, yeah.
And then finally, your 8 seed Toronto Maple Leafs will be playing the 9 seed Columbus Blue Jackets. And I think this one's a toss-up. This will be a really good game. I think the break favors Toronto a little bit more, just because they have more veteran guys. And the trade deadline happened about 2 weeks before this whole thing happened, and Columbus kind of sold out for all their good players for future draft picks. So we'll have to see what happens with that. So I think Toronto could take that one.
Sure. I'm just taking your word for it. I'm not a hockey guy at all. I follow it just barely. Yeah. Which
then I think moving into the actual playoffs, I do believe if they're going to play it like the NFL playoffs, I believe that the Bruins would get the lowest seed on down to, again, Philadelphia, who would get the highest remaining seed. So who knows? Maybe all the underdogs could win, and then you have some interesting things going on. But I do believe that is how it'll go next. So then, Boston would get your highest seed. So the Maple Leafs at 8 and so on. So I think that's how they're going to run it, which will be interesting.
Yeah, sure. Like I said, anything could happen. This whole COVID-19 thing really threw everything off. So I think for some teams, this is a real opportunity to shock the world.
Yep. And that'd be fun to see.
Always.
With that, do you want to move into the Western Conference?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So your top 4 seeds for the Western Conference. At the number 1 seed is your reigning champions, the St. Louis Blues. The number 2 seed, shout out to Cody here, the Colorado Avalanche. Yeah, they probably would have taken the number 1 seed if the season went on, but that's all right. We can still get it done.
Yeah, fair. I kind of agree with that one.
Yep. At the number 3 seed is the Las Vegas Golden Knights. And then we talked about it at the 4 seed, the Dallas Stars. So those are your automatic bids into the playoffs. I think we talked about these 4. Dallas, congratulations, you're in. They're, again, like Philadelphia, congratulations, fans. You guys are going to get a chance to make some noise. You're already in, so get it done. And then I think the other 3 are gimmies. They could definitely be there in St. Louis, Colorado, and Las Vegas. I think they're all 3 deserving of being top seed teams, and I think they will play well in the playoffs.
I'm totally agreed.
All right, then moving into the qualifying round. So just like the Eastern Conference, you're going to have these 4 games that send the 4 winners actually into the playoffs to play those top 4 seeds. So the first game, you have the number 5 5th seed Edmonton Oilers playing the 12th seed Chicago Blackhawks. We talked about this when we were talking about the Pittsburgh-Montreal matchup. I do think the Oilers probably win this 3-0. Yeah, Chicago was just not very good. So
Okay, fair enough.
Yep, Edmonton. I think Edmonton would probably get the 3 seed if the season goes on. They have 2 of the best players to ever play, so I think that they'll be hungry and they will, feel a little cheated like Pittsburgh and go out and take out some of these big dogs. So that is my prediction there. In the second game, we have the 6th-seeded Nashville Predators playing the 11th seed Arizona Coyotes. I know our friend Zach is happy about that. But
is he that happy? I feel like the Predators are gonna do away with the Coyotes.
No, I might be a little bit more optimistic about this matchup. I think they could be decent, a decent matchup. I think the Coyotes have shown that if they turn it on, they can play well. So I think they just need to have a real good series, and they could win it. So we'll have to see that. It'll be a good series. But I think you're right. I think Nashville will win. So the next game has the number 7, the 7th seed Vancouver Canucks playing the 10th seed Minnesota Wild. I'm going to have to give this one probably to the Canucks outright. I think they have a very, very good young talent guy in Ellis Peterson. I want to say that's how you say his name. I know it's exactly, I don't know how to say his first name, but it's definitely Peterson. And he's ready to go. They have a good squad in Vancouver, and I think that they will get this part done. They will get this game done and make it into the playoffs.
Oh, no doubt.
Then, for our final game in the Western Conference is the 8th seed Calgary Flame taking on the 9th seed Winnipeg Jets. Man, this is tough because I know, again, Calgary is always hungry to play well in the playoffs, but they were, like the Florida Panthers on the eastern side, skidding a little bit going into the pandemic. So we'll have to see what happens there. I think this is a toss-up, but I have to give it to Calgary in a very very hard-fought game.
Okay. I'll take your word for it then.
Yep. I do want to add on one thing to this Western Conference playoff that is very intriguing to me and interesting and can be very sad for a lot of hockey fans is we don't see the San Jose Sharks in this playoff because they were not playing as well as they could have going into the pandemic. And that's interesting because they obviously were in the semifinal against the Blues last year. And yeah, they're not there. So I think that's a big loss for NHL. I mean, it's cool to see other teams like the Coyotes get in. and like the Canucks, but it's interesting that San Jose is not there. They've been a perennial playoff team the last few years, and it's going to be interesting to see them not there. So that is one team that I wanted to just say, sorry you got left out, and I'll miss that team as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get them all in because then you start making exceptions for everyone. So it is what it is, but I mean, hey, that's why you got to play through a full season. You know? Or that's why you got to play your hardest as the season goes on. That's just sports, you know?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. As a sports guy, you got to play every single game like it's your last because, I mean, an example here for the 2020 season, I guarantee you the San Jose Sharks did not know the last game they played was going to be their last game of the season. So play every game like it's your last.
Yeah, always. I mean, that goes for all the teams, obviously, but hey, it just goes to show, you know. And like I said, it is kind of a weird pandemic, so it is a weird pandemic, but a weird time. I think it is understandable that, you know, I think some teams should give themselves a break because they didn't know, like, it happens, you know, and there's things that they couldn't have foreseen. So, I mean, this is just one of those years that you kind of just chalk up to, like, something crazy just happening, and that's why you didn't make it in.
Yep. I know Cody told me that don't ever root for a Toronto team because whenever they win a championship, the next year is just out of control. So don't ever root for Toronto because, you know, he has facts to back it up. I know he talked about how when, I don't know how long ago it was, probably like back in the early 1900s when the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup, and then the next year they didn't have a Stanley Cup. And then a few years later in like the 1930s or whatever, the Toronto Blue Jays won the baseball championship. They didn't have a World Series the next year. And then if we look at it, you know, the Toronto Raptors won the NBA championship last year, and well, there's no NBA championship this year. So let's just hope that the Toronto Maple Leafs do not win.
That is a very good point. We're not wrong at all. And I mean, it's not just the NBA championship. There's no championship going on as of now in any sport.
You're right.
And yeah, there you go.
So just don't root for Toronto teams.
Well, when we have the Ball Girls on this other podcast that we are thinking of collabing with, hopefully pretty soon here, we'll have to ask them about that. I know they're both Canadian, so it'll be interesting to see what they have to say to Cody.
We'll dog on their teams.
Yeah, for sure. All right, is that all for NHL right now?
That is it. That is it for the NHL. I think that's most of it. It's going to be exciting, and I'm excited to get back to sports. You know, I think whatever teams are playing in those first two games, if it comes back, is going to be, you know, prime time television because everyone's going to be watching it. It doesn't matter who they are.
Well, yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I think it's big time either way. You know, sports is sports. I'm just glad that a league finally has a set plan, you know, rather than some rumors. And I know some leagues can't help it, but I mean, it gives me some confidence at least.
Yeah, we could just be a month away from the return of sports, which would be awesome.
For sure. All right. So speaking of sports, we're going to talk college football and, you know, the potential plans they have moving forward because unlike the NHL, they are not all on the same page. Coming up next.
Welcome back to the Cycle 365, episode 34. Shorter episode today, but you know, still getting the content out to you guys. Make sure to check out the added content of Simon's mini-series on youth sports. He is dropping those, I think, every week, correct, Simon?
Yes, every week.
Cool.
It should be earlier in the week, so set up that we drop the official episode, you know, Friday, Thursday, and then the mini-series comes out Monday, Tuesday.
Okay, so, you know, it might be a shorter actual podcast this week, but make sure to check out the Cycle 365 Presents Youth Sports. I heard it's a great time with our friend Simon here and whoever else he brings on. But anyways, moving into this next segment, continue to talk about how return of sports are going to look. coming for these fall sports. I had lots of people ask me in questions about what are fall sports going to look like. So we're going to look at, I believe Simon said, football, college, and then he's going to briefly touch on the NFL's plan. So we're talking football and fall sports returning. Yeah, I'm excited to hear what Simon has to tell us. But first, I'll just start with a little bit of a, personal experience. As you know, I'm a football coach now, a college football coach in the NAIA. We are in the NAIA, so it's not the NCAA. Simon will get to the NCAA here in a few minutes, but the NAIA is full go. They're, our coaching staff is preparing for an actual full season of football, and I've received emails from our coaching staff and from our school officials that we're going to be, as students, we're going to be back on campus this fall for in-person teaching. So the NAIA is full go and planning on having a real season of football. So that's exciting. So yeah, so I'm with the coaching staff, me and our coaching staff are pretending like it's a normal recruiting semester, I guess you could say, and just preparing for a regular season. So that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it is exciting. That's really good news. There are multiple places all over that are opening up. Real quick, I'll just go over the NFL's plan. I mean, it's way off. College football is definitely closer to actually opening, I guess, than the NFL. I know the NFL is going as scheduled. They want to have fans, which we talked about, but I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, am I wrong here, Jesse, or what?
I mean, I know they announced, I think this last weekend, that they're full go. They're gonna have a season, and they expect to have full sets of fans there. I don't know. I don't know. It's tough for me to say. Obviously, I know you said you don't want to relapse, and then you'd rather just play a game with no fans than have to shut everything down again. I think you're right. Maybe you could go half capacity or like a fourth capacity, something like that. Maybe bump the price up so you can get a little extra revenue. But I don't know. I think it's more of a wait and see kind of deal.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll see. In worst case scenario, I know the NFL has it planned out that if they have to wait a little bit, first 4 weeks they're gonna. So the schedule just came out, right? Or well, it came out a couple weeks, but it came out, and so basically the first 4 weeks of that season, they're just not gonna play if this thing's still going on, and they'll just add it on at the end. Weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 will go on after weeks 17 or 18 now, I guess, and then it will just go as usual. Which, on first glance, it doesn't look like a big deal, but it's. I mean, I think it's a pretty big deal though, because there are some divisional matchups that you're pushing towards the end. All the buys are messed up now because now the mid-season buys are like basically near the beginning, and then I guess some of the buys that you might have at the beginning of the season are pushed towards the end. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, if a team has a week 4 bye, now you get your last week is a bye. The last week of the season is your bye week. So I think that's kind of sucky, but we'll see what happens there. I just want to say before we move on, I do think that the NFL should just focus, like the NHL, to just focus on getting an organizational standpoint of how you're going to play these games, which I feel like they have been doing, and then worry about the fans when the time comes, because I think that's something you could do. So I would just say that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you got to be realistic with it. The fans, they're great. But as we could see with a lot of the sporting events going on, specifically like even UFC 249 that happened a bit ago, like sports is sports. It worked out well for UFC, and I think it'll work out even better for football, because football is still football. I mean, maybe you won't have the hype of the crowd, but you'll still have the big plays and literally everything else,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be, obviously, if you can still watch on TV, it's fine. So,
yeah, very true. So let's move on into college football, because Division I, because this is where it gets real interesting. So let's start on our side of. Okay, well maybe not our side because you're on the other coast, Jesse. But let's start on my side of the country, the West Coast, the Pac-12. So, basically, most of the Pac-12 schools, I know for a fact it's Arizona, Oregon, and Washington. All the schools in those states they are pretty much on schedule and kind of expect to play some sort of season. Not sure how it is, but no, the Pac-12, they're allowing them to open up facilities on June 15th. They'll all return. But as of now, I have not heard anything about the California schools. The last thing I heard, honestly, was that they weren't going to play at all this season. And so that's really interesting because that's a solid chunk of the Pac-12. And then I haven't heard anything from Colorado, and I've heard that there are some improvements in Utah, but it's still better than California and Colorado as of now. So that's what I've heard moving forward.
Yeah. I've been talking to a few guys down in Arizona that say they've been telling me that everything's opening up and on track to be back to normal by the football season. So obviously that's Arizona. You talked about them, but that's all I know for Pac-12.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it makes sense because California's been hit pretty hard by COVID, and Colorado has definitely been hit hard by COVID. It's one of the states that's not super populated that's really been suffering, and I don't know if CU is going to actually be able to join, which is really interesting, honestly, because, if I'm being honest, I know things are opening right now in Colorado, but we'll just have to see how that goes. I think there's more optimism for CU than UCLA, USC, Stanford, all those California schools. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do, but I do think at the same time, if it gets close to the season and you see all these other teams just go all in, I think the California teams will be like, all right, let's just do it. So I personally think that's what's going to happen. Just an impulse decision of let's do it. So that's my best guess.
Oh, I could see it because the only thing is that they wouldn't be able to play games in California. I don't know if they will be able to open their facilities, but if they are, they're still open for business. It just means basically all their games they'll have to play, they'll have to travel to, because California is its own thing. They're not going to let states just open up facilities, or sorry, not facilities, stadiums willy-nilly. So I think, this is just what I heard, but if they do play games, California teams do play games, it would have to pretty much all be away, which would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, at that level, teams like Stanford, USC, and UCLA, I don't think it affects them at all. They're on the road anyways all the time. So I think the teams it could affect are teams like San Diego State, San Jose State, and more of the FCS schools like San Diego, teams like that. I think that's more Fresno State. Those are teams that it would affect a little more.
Yeah, I agree there. They're the smaller schools, so they're struggling right now. All football programs in the nation are struggling financially pretty much. We kind of hit on this, I want to say a week or two ago. Is that right?
Yeah, it was last week. We talked about the college football playoff last week, but maybe it was touching on the smaller school. Well, it was last week.
Yeah, you're right. It was last week. We'll just have to see. The Pac-12's college football future as of now, something that's very fluid. It could either go really good or really bad. I'm half surprised that Washington's open, because I know Washington's been hit pretty hard by COVID. Washington, as in Washington and Washington State. We'll just have to see. Hopefully there's not a second, surge or anything like that, because I could definitely see some of these states that have been hit hard just straight up close down. And then next thing you know, you maybe have Arizona teams and maybe Oregon or Utah. And I don't know how much of a league that is,
Yeah, maybe it comes down to just, maybe combining, instead of having your Power 5 conferences, maybe just combining an East and a West for this year.
That would be interesting. I don't know how.
I don't know how it would work, but you'd have teams so your Western Conference would be your Arizona teams, your Texas teams, Oklahoma, Nebraska, stuff like that. Anyone west of that, and then your Eastern teams. Well, you got your SEC, and you could probably throw some Big Ten teams in the Western side, but that would be an interesting thing.
No, it really would. We'll have to see what happens. I'm not sure if they'll play any non-conference games either. That's something that might be a toss up because I know Texas was supposed to play USC. Right now, I don't think they are going to play USC unless they go to Austin, which is a pretty big swing. Also, even then, I mean, you still got a bunch of Californians, or Californians in college going to Texas, and that might trigger a lot of things there. So it will definitely affect out of conference play as well in the Pac-12.
Yeah,
but we'll have to see. So moving forward, I think my opinion, this is just my opinion, the conference that I feel like for sure is going to play, because I mean, it's their way of life, would probably have to be the SEC. I really have a hard time seeing any of those teams just not playing a game, because I know everyone in that conference, like the leadership there, is pretty vocal about playing football no matter what, even if it's without fans.
Yeah, I agree. I think the SEC will play most of their teams, and I would also put on the same boat the Big 12. I think the Big 12 will play too. I mean, they don't have as many teams in their conference, which helped them out. So I think they're on the same boat there. Well, they're just going to play no matter what.
Yeah, no, for sure. I know the SEC, they honestly probably could just not play any out-of-conference games, which will be really interesting. So they'll just straight up go head against each other, which would honestly be really entertaining either way. And I think that'll be really interesting to see just, the SEC stay within itself, because I know that there were some talks that they'll play football no matter what, but if it comes to the college football playoffs, they might be a little hesitant depending on the teams that make it in and whatnot. So we'll just have to see. I haven't heard a ton about the Big 12, but I could see them starting up too.
Yeah, rip if that happens, rip Arkansas and rip Vanderbilt, because they're going to get smoked.
Yeah, no doubt. They're going to get slaughtered. And that will honestly affect recruiting, because that's just not a good look when you lose.
Yeah. But we'll see what happens.
For sure.
Oh, just saying, now we can move into the two other conferences, the ACC and the Big Ten, that are definitely going to be affected by this, and we might see a few teams not play, like a big one that you can talk about.
Yeah, let's start with the Big Ten first, because it's the better conference. Oh, the president, right? It was the president of the University of Michigan, am I right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. The president of Michigan basically said that they are not going to have a football season if their students are not in classes, which as of now, I don't think they're going to be in classes. So basically, effectively, I'm pretty sure it's a he, but he's canceling the Michigan football season, which is huge.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they're still optimistic. We're still going to be optimistic, and still definitely there's a possibility, but it'd be interesting to see a Big Ten without Michigan in it for a year. That takes away a bunch of big games like the Michigan State game, Ohio State Michigan game, and even the Penn State Michigan game. I think it'd be a very interesting dynamic to have a Big Ten without Michigan there, and it'll be interesting to see what other Big Ten teams follow that plan of action with the students coming back or not.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. I think, honestly, at this point, Michigan's at a pretty tough spot. Like, you and me have been both pretty critical of the way, like, how should I say this? We've been critical of their success and the hype that they get, which, in my opinion, is pretty undeserving. And I think that Jim Harbaugh right now should be on the hot seat. I don't know if he is right now. He definitely should be, because he's not really producing the results that they're paying him for. So basically, I don't know. I think if Michigan doesn't play, this will hurt them. We already mentioned it. It's recruiting, and you're recruiting against some really good schools. And not that Michigan isn't a brand. It's just that, like, you gotta be consistent with it. You gotta put a product out on the fields for players to see, because if they don't see anything, then they're like, well, what does it say about Michigan if Ohio State's playing, if Michigan State's playing, like if literally every other school is playing? Because I don't know, that might give off a bad vibe.
Yep, I'd agree. I think one other team that I could think of might, in the Big Ten follow this trend would be Rutgers from New Jersey. I could see them not playing a season, but I mean, who really cares? It's Rutgers. They're not going to win anything anyways. So, that's
no,
another team I could
you're
think
right.
of that could follow.
Isn't Maryland in the Big Ten as well?
Yeah, Maryland is also in the Big Ten, but I've more faith in them than Rutgers.
Okay. Wait, more faith in them opening and playing the season, or?
Yeah, I have more faith in Maryland playing than Rutgers, mainly because Maryland is geared up for like a great season. But I mean, you never know.
Okay, all right. I mean, because I know Maryland's pretty close on the East Coast. Like, you never know. I mean, I think it's worth just having them on the radar. I think as of now, they're opening stuff up a little bit faster than some of the teams closer to New York. So we'll just have to see. Maryland is stacked, though. Maryland is a team that I was pretty high on before all this happened, especially with getting Talia Tagovailoa over there.
Yeah, I know. I don't remember his name, but I know that Maryland got like the number 2 overall receiver as well. He decommitted to Notre Dame and went to decided to go to Maryland. So it could be a dynamic duo there.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like it. I like it, but we'll just have to see. You know, I think the Big Ten is a conference for sure that you got to monitor a little bit. It's not as concerning as the Pac-12 because, in my opinion, the Pac-12 could easily like break up like as fast as the plans they're making to come back. You know, because there's just a lot of things fragile over there. There's higher profile cases and more cases going on. And I mean, not that the East Coast isn't suffering a little bit, but I mean, I'd probably give the Big Ten a little bit of an edge over the Pac-12, but I'd still keep an eye on them because there's still an opportunity for them to just not play, or for a lot of the teams to just not play, which would be really interesting, you know? Yep,
I'd agree. I'd agree that the Big Ten has a better chance of playing than the Pac-12. But I would say the ACC is in the same boat as the Pac-12. We're going to get to them in a second, but I definitely think that if you're rating this, SEC and Big 12 are going to be fine. Big 10 would be next, and then the rest of the ACC and the Pac-12 would be next. Would be the bottom guys. So I think you're right with that.
Yeah, for sure. And so let's talk about the ACC, because if I'm being honest, I really haven't heard a whole ton. I know they're a huge. I mean, obviously it's the Atlantic Coast, conference. So a lot of those teams are on the coast, and I would probably be a little bit worried of, cases potentially spreading to the states in those areas, and I'm not super confident that all the teams will be able to come back, if I'm just being real.
Yeah, I was going to agree. I think it's definitely interesting. I haven't heard much from the ACC yet, but it's definitely geographically very interesting to see that there's half of them in the northeastern part of America and half of them in the southeastern conference, or southeastern part of America, where you could see a thing of like the bottom half, so like your Clemson, Florida State, NC State, your southern half of the conference playing, but the northern half not playing. So then your teams like Boston College, in Connecticut, I guess Connecticut's not in the ACC, but ACC teams from the north that aren't going to play.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, maybe this is for the best, just because I think there are more competitive teams in that southern part of the ACC. Isn't University of North Carolina in the ACC as well?
Yeah, they are, and they'd be in that northern part, the southern part probably. They'd probably play.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of noise coming out of North Carolina. Obviously, Mac Brown was over there for 1 year. He had some success. He's looking to build on top of that. And they have a nice little quarterback. Not many people is talking about him, but they have a nice little quarterback in Sam Howell, who is a million times better than whatever Mitchell Trubisky was when he was at North Carolina. And some people are comparing him to Trubisky, and I think that's pretty unfair. If you look at the highlights and even just his film, he's way better. And honestly, if there is a scenario where, only the southern part really of the ACC plays, I could see North Carolina possibly. I don't think they're going to beat Clemson. There's no way if Clemson's playing that they're going to beat them, but they'll be pretty competitive, and I think they could beat some of these southern teams. Maybe, most definitely some of these northern teams who are a little bit weaker.
Mm-hmm. Obviously another interesting team in the ACC in that southern part is Duke, so, that could be something as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So there's a lot of teams in this conference that could step it up, but at the end of the day, we know if Clemson's playing, they're gonna probably win the conference. I don't think there's any doubt about it.
100%. I'm making the prediction now. If there is a college football playoff and a championship for the 2020 season, I think Clemson's gonna win.
Yeah, no, I think they would win too. I think honestly, Dabo Sweeney is the type of guy that could easily guide and inspire this young group of kids through a interesting and weird time like this, and really put all of their efforts into playing football. And I mean, but at the same time, I could also see Clemson potentially being a wild card and just closing for the safety of the kids, which would be a very interesting move because then at that point the ACC becomes wide open. And I don't know if they'll have a representative in the playoffs potentially, but it would be just interesting football to see,
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting if Clemson didn't play. But I feel like if the ACC is going to play, Clemson's going to play.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. It'll be interesting to see. I do agree that the ACC is a little bit more fragile. It definitely is concerning that I haven't heard much about reopenings for colleges at the level, just because it's like I don't know. I really just haven't heard anything. I've heard things from the Pac-12, the SEC, the Big 12, even the Big 10, but it's definitely a little concerning that I haven't heard much out of the ACC because there's no news at all.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. It's going to be an interesting college football season. It's just going to be an interesting fall sports season in general. So I'm it might be sad, but I'm still excited to see what happens.
Yeah, no, me too. So here's a real question though, or a question that we should definitely consider. But do you think there'll be a college football playoffs moving forward at the end of the season, assuming that some of these conferences aren't complete, and then the NCAA ultimately decides like, hey, maybe we should just stick to conference championships and that be that, and then it would just be an asterisk on this season? Do you think there's a possibility that happens?
Well, there's obviously that possibility for sure. I think even if they do have the playoff, there's going to be an asterisk next to it if it's not everyone playing. But it's definitely a possibility. I think that they're going to go ahead and actually play a playoff. In my opinion, I think they should play a playoff just to, maybe try to bring back some normality in the NCAA football. And hopefully, maybe get some revenue back that they lost. But I do think they'll play it just with an asterisk next to it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it'll be interesting for sure. We've already talked about it, how this next season of sports will be very interesting to see because there's a lot of things going on and it's not normal. It's really not. And I think this is a question that should definitely be asked realistically, but if this thing keeps going on and some teams just can't play, this next season, do you think there's a possibility that multiple Division I programs potentially shut down?
Definitely a possibility. I have no idea. Obviously, I'm not in the financial rooms of those D1 programs, but definitely some could fold. But I don't know. That's not really a question for me, I don't think. But in my opinion, I guess my opinion's coming from more of a biased standpoint of my love for college football. My opinion is that none of it's going to affect anything, and who knows? Obviously, we have plans for July, but August could roll around and this whole thing could just be, over. So it's just kind of, an unknown, up there in the air thing right now.
Yeah, that's very true. We'll just have to see what happens. If they have to push back the college football season, I think they definitely can just by not playing any out-of-conference games. Even then, you kind of risk, spreading the virus if someone contracts it and whatnot by traveling, because the difference with some of these sports professional teams is that they're all playing in one facility, so everyone's held in there. College, got students at different schools that pretty much need to be at those schools, get an education, and then train as well. So I don't know.
Yep, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So definitely stay tuned to the news and to our podcast, because we will bring you the news of what's happening.
Yeah, no doubt. But hey, that pretty much wraps up this episode. Next week, we're going to talk about the NBA. Cody's not here, so we wanted to wait on Cody. So next week we're going to talk about the NBA reopening, some of the proposals they have, because they have a ton of proposals, but really nothing that is close to being in place like we've really just talked about just now. So it'll be interesting to look at. But yeah, next week hopefully we get Cody back. We talk NBA, Last Dance, and the top 74 NBA players of all time. So yeah, I'm your host, Simon Villanos.
And I'm Jesse Booten.
And this is episode 34, recorded on May 27th, 2020. Post some love on social media. Look out for the next mini-series episode, which will be an interview with Kenny Long, the voice of Typha from the hit show Friday Night Tykes, and, on Esquire as well. It's great. Kenny's a nice guy. We had some really good conversations. Check that out. That should be a longer episode dropping sometime next week on Monday or Tuesday. But, yeah. We'll catch y'all later.